It's something the likes of which nobody has seen before. There's never been anything even close to it. It will be the most advanced, most capable, most lethal aircraft ever built. With these bold words, President Donald Trump announced the pending arrival of the world's first sixth-generation fighter jet, the F-47. Since its introduction into service in 2005, the F-22 Raptor has been the cutting edge in supersonic stealth fighter technology. Now the proposed F-47 promises to make it look like a toy and may obsolete it overnight. So what do we know about this groundbreaking new jet concept? What makes it so special? And how did it come about? In this video, we'll unpack everything we know about the planned F-47, but first, why the unusual name or designation F-47 in the first place? Well, according to a statement by the US Air Force Chief of Staff, General David Alvin, there are three reasons. Firstly, the designation honors the legacy of the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt. The P-47 was a World War II-era fighter aircraft that served as a successful high-altitude fighter and was the foremost American fighter bomber in the ground attack role. Capable of carrying 5-inch rockets or a bomb payload of 2,500 pounds, the Thunderbolt was highly effective as a short, medium, and long-range escort fighter in high-altitude air-to-air combat and ground attack in both the European and Pacific theaters. So the F-47 is intended to have the same kind of devastating impact. Secondly, the number 47 pays tribute to the founding year of the US Air Force, which was officially established with the signing of the National Security Act by President Harry Truman on September 18, 1947. Of course, as we've just noted, the US military has been using airplanes well before 1947, but before its official establishment, the Air Service was part of the Army Signal Corps, created in 1907, when it grew substantially to reach a peak of 80,000 aircraft and 2.4 million personnel by the end of World War II in 1945. That's a considerably larger number of planes and personnel than it has today, although no one in their right mind could claim that the Air Force is a weaker outfit as a result. Rapid evolution in aviation and related technologies like computing, plus an exponential growth in the destructive power and range of the weaponry wielded by the US's current aircraft, mean the Air Force needs fewer planes and personnel to maintain its status as the most advanced and feared aviation power on the planet. As of the most recent figures, the Air Force had approximately 5,500 military aircraft in its inventory, including fighters, bombers, helicopters, transport aircraft, and more, though that number has continued to decline and is expected to drop below 5,000 in fiscal year 2025. The service also operates approximately 400 intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs, and an ever-increasing arsenal of drones and other unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs. In terms of personnel, as of early 2025, the Air Force had a total of 321,848 active duty airmen, 147,879 civilian personnel, 68,927 reserve airmen, and 105,104 Air National Guard airmen, plus approximately 65,000 associated Civil Air Patrol auxiliarists. That's just shy of 30% of the personnel it had in 1945, highlighting just how much more productive the Air Force has become over the years. The third reason for the name F-47 is to recognize Trump's support for the development of this next-level aircraft. Trump is, of course, the 47th President of the United States, and he's not known to downplay his role in successful initiatives. However, the program to develop the new fighter had been placed on hold for much of the final year of President Joe Biden's previous administration, with concerns over cost and relevance being examined. Trump, on the other hand, decided to move forward purposefully with it while implementing a rationalization of defense spending in general. So now we know why it's called the F-47, but who's going to build it, and how did the awarding of the contract come about? The short answer to the question, who's going to build it, is Boeing. As announced by Trump in March 2025 at the unveiling of the F-47 project, Boeing won the contract to produce the Air Force's Next-Generation Air Dominance, or NGAD, fighter initiative. NGAD is an Air Force initiative aimed at developing key technologies to ensure air superiority, with the primary goal being to yield a family of systems that will succeed the Lockheed Martin F-22 Raptor. The centerpiece of the NGAD program is a crewed fighter aircraft that was originally referred to as the Penetrating Counter-Air, or PCA platform, an early term that has since evolved into what we now know as the F-47. The NGAD program was initiated in 2014 as part of the DARPA Aerospace Dominance Initiative and has since evolved to include more frequent industry competitions and simulations. Initially, proposals for the NGAD fighter were submitted by Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and Northrop Grumman. However, in June 2023, Northrop Grumman withdrew from the competition, according to the company, to pursue other opportunities in military aircraft. While those other opportunities weren't revealed, military analysts suspected they were referring to the Navy's F-XX program. The F-XX is part of the Navy's own NGAD effort, which is separate from, but heavily intertwined with, the Air Force program of the same name. The Navy and the Air Force are working closely on various aspects of their respective NGAD initiatives, such as the Collaborative Combat Aircraft or CCA program. CCA is another element of NGAD, centered on the acquisition of a fleet of advanced but relatively low-cost drones with high degrees of autonomy. The Air Force is planning the acquisition of 200 NGAD combat jets and at least 1,000 CCAs, envisioning 2 CCAs being paired with each of the NGAD jets and 300 F-35A Joint Strike Fighters. That said, the Air Force has also stated that the final size of its CCA force could be much larger. But regardless of how large the fleet ultimately becomes, and whether Northrop Grumman is ultimately selected to build the CCA component of NGAD, the company won't be building the F-47. Boeing will. Northrop Grumman's withdrawal left Boeing and Lockheed Martin facing off to build the NGAD combat jet, but neither company had formally confirmed it was competing until the announcement of the contract award. Indeed, in contrast to previous Air Force fighter competitions, NGAD had been cloaked in secrecy from the outset, with the Air Force itself not disclosing which companies were in the running for NGAD until very late in the game. The Engineering and Manufacturing Development or EMD contract for NGAD is expected to be worth approximately $20 billion initially. However, across the life of the program, the company is in line to receive hundreds of billions of dollars in orders. Once series production commences, the unit cost of each F-47 has been estimated to be upwards of $300 million. It's not inconceivable, however, that the costs could be significantly higher. In addition to the CCA autonomous drones already discussed, NGAD also envisages the development of new jet engines, weapons, electronic warfare suites, sensors, networking ecosystems, battle management capabilities, and more. Integration of these under-development elements into the F-47 will undoubtedly affect the cost, and it's rare that the introduction of new high-tech military technology brings unit costs down. So what gave Boeing the edge over Lockheed Martin in the race to secure this lucrative contract? The exact details have not been made public, but this marks the second fighter development competition in relatively quick succession in which Lockheed Martin has lost out. In early 2025, it was reported that the company was dropped from a separate competition to build the US Navy's F-XX next-generation carrier-based stealth fighter, part of the Navy's own NGAD initiative. According to reporting at the time, Lockheed's proposal simply didn't meet the Navy's stated requirements, leading to its elimination. But that is almost certainly due to the fact that Lockheed Martin is already neck-deep in the fighter business, rather than any slight on the company's ability to deliver the goods. Its Skunk Works Advanced Projects division is famous for pushing the technological envelope, especially when it comes to tactical air power-related programs. Indeed, its F-35 Joint Strike Fighter is currently in production for 3 US services and multiple foreign countries. Manufacturing of the latest Block 70-72 versions of the F-16 is also ongoing, and the company continues to sustain the F-22 Raptor. Meanwhile, for Boeing, the awarding of the NGAD contract is surely a huge boost at a tricky time. Throughout 2024, the company suffered numerous high-profile setbacks in both its commercial and defense businesses. On the commercial side, issues such as a door blowing off a passenger liner mid-flight led to the FAA grounding 171 Boeing 737 MAX 9 planes over safety concerns and demanding a plan to address systemic quality control issues. There was also a series of incidents including fuel leaks, a tire from a plane's landing gear struts falling off immediately after takeoff, and an external panel somehow being lost mid-flight. These led to growing scrutiny and bad press for Boeing. Trump had also slammed the company over its contract to build 2 new Air Force One planes, which are running behind schedule. All in all, the year 2024 for Boeing was a repeat of their troubles in 2021, which was summed up by the headline of a Business Insider article from December of that year that read, "Boeing's terrible, horrible, no good, very bad year." On the defense side of Boeing's business, and especially in the context of NGAD, the company's entire future as a fighter builder could be at stake. Boeing is currently building F-15 Advanced Eagles and the Air Force's T-7 jet trainer, with no sign of that changing in the foreseeable future. However, the company announced in 2023 that it was going to shutter the FA-18EF Super Hornet line by 2027 and refocus in part on advanced combat jet efforts instead. To that end, the firm has made large investments in its St. Louis, Missouri facility to prepare it for 6th-generation fighter production. In June 2024, the company's defense unit, Boeing Defense, Space and Security, or BDS for short, announced that it had begun construction of a $1.8 billion classified advanced combat aircraft plant near its headquarters in the city. The 1.1 million square feet facility is called the Brownlee site. At the time of this announcement, the investment was seen as potentially a very risky move, with the aforementioned Biden administration's reassessment of the NGAD initiative underway and seemingly having walked back on its commitments to the program. Now that decision seems prescient, but what exactly is going to be built there? The first production F-47s are slated for delivery in 2029, with a fleet of some 200 jets eventually set to roll off the production lines. In his F-47 unveiling announcement, Trump alluded to the fact that prototypes had already been flying for 5 years, confirming rumors that have been circulating in military circles since 2020. But so far, all we have to go on in terms of the specs and design of the new plane are a few artist renditions and design prototypes. Even then, it would be a mistake to take these at face value. It's customary for the US military to smudge or distort certain features in early renditions of forthcoming tech. This is done in order to mislead and confuse enemies, who scrutinize these designs to try and find flaws or countermeasures as early as possible. However, the initial pictures do reveal quite a bit about the new jet. Viewed ostensibly as a successor to the F-22 Raptor stealth fighter, the NGAD combat jet was always intended to provide air power capabilities sufficient to counter near-peer adversaries such as China and Russia. Although the details remain highly classified, it's widely assumed to be tailored to counter future high-end fights in the Indo-Pacific theater in particular. As General Alvin put it, it's the most advanced, lethal, and adaptable fighter ever developed, designed to outpace, outmaneuver, and outmatch any adversary that dares to challenge our brave airmen. As such, the F-47 will emphasize significant range and payload capabilities, but will also boast a host of exotic features and subsystems, including broadband stealth, advanced electronics, and other so-called spectral warfare capabilities. It has also always been envisioned as serving, in part, as a forward drone controller and otherwise operating closely together with companion CCA drones. One of the most striking design features revealed so far is the wings, which sport very high dihedral and downward swept tips. One positive aspect of this design element is that sensors and communications antennas on the bottom of the aircraft's fuselage can maintain line of sight to targets even when the aircraft is banking at steeper angles. There also appears to be no tail and some sort of canard foreplane, which is a small wing or control surface placed forward of the main wing on an aircraft. Canards are used to provide longitudinal stability and control and can serve as an additional lifting surface or for better airflow control over the main wing. These structures are usually not optimal for low observability, aka stealth, but adding them would allow for better maneuverability and stability, especially for an inherently unstable tailless design. Another striking feature from the initial images of the F-47 is a very broad, shovel-like nose, which could house a very large radar array, and a large bubble canopy along with a single nose wheel. The overall design of the fuselage appears loosely similar to Boeing's X-45 UCAV demonstrators and has a superficial likeness to the NASA Boeing X-36 tailless fighter agility research aircraft. Analysts have been quick to point out the similarities between the initial images of the F-47 and the McDonnell Douglas Phantom Works, now known as Boeing Phantom Works X-36 subscale demonstrator from the 1990s, which was used to prove out tailless fighter design. The canard arrangement, canopy, and nose are certainly similar, prompting some more cynical observers to speculate that the F-47 designs presented so far may in fact just be a straight-up rehashing of the X-36 design. That's highly unlikely. But what we do know is that both Boeing and Lockheed Martin built an X-plane demonstrator prototype in their quest to win the NGAD fighter jet contract. The first was launched in 2019 and another took to the skies in 2022. According to Alvin, these demonstrators have flown hundreds of hours, testing cutting-edge concepts and laying the foundation for the F-47. It's unclear what became of these X-planes. They could have served their finite purpose, not uncommon for flight demonstration vehicles with limited airframe hours designed into them, or they could continue to support NGAD and other programs. Time will tell. But the fact that both demonstrators have clocked up so much flight time means that many of the risks involved in prototyping the new aircraft will have been minimized, especially if they were somewhat production representative, an increasingly common development tactic in an age of digital engineering and advanced rapid manufacturing. Coming back to the question of why Boeing was selected over Lockheed Martin, this extensive testing also suggests that the decision was based on real performance data via flight testing, presumably in a quasi-head-to-head manner. Regardless, all of this tickles the imagination as to what features and firepower the world's first 6th-generation stealth fighter will pack, At the time of the making of this video, most of the details were not publicly available, but there's been plenty of educated speculation based on information provided by the US military and the producers. As noted earlier, the emphasis of the plane will be on increasing the payload, range, and stealth. This generally comes at the cost of reduced maneuverability, but some of the design features we've already discussed may help to compensate. For example, the unprecedented tailless configuration not only acts to maximize survivability by increasing stealth across a broad radio frequency range, but it should significantly add to aerodynamic efficiency. The tail fin is, after all, one of the most radar-reflective parts of an aircraft. Another area that requires compromise is the trade-off between speed and stealth, particularly when it comes to dash speed. Traditionally, high-speed flight turns a very stealthy aircraft into an unstealthy one on the increasingly critical infrared spectrum. High thrust settings, especially the use of afterburner, along with skin heating due to friction with the air, are major problems for higher Mach dashes. This is where supercruise capability can help, as it negates the need for an infrared sensor-friendly afterburner, but higher speeds could be readily available using the afterburner, or even with higher dry thrust settings if the next-generation engine is capable of it. In his announcement, Trump suggested that the F-47 would reach speeds of around Mach 2. But traditionally speaking, once you approach Mach 2, skin heating becomes a major problem, at least traditionally speaking. That's why the supercruise sweet spot for the F-22 Raptor, which the F-47 is intended to upgrade, is somewhere between Mach 1 and Mach 2. It's possible that advanced materials science and thermal management systems, in addition to coatings and countermeasures, could help cloak the NGAD fighter from infrared detection, or otherwise attenuate its thermal load, even at higher speeds where skin friction would bloom the jet's infrared signature. In that case, the aircraft's high sustained cruise speed and its survivability, while in that part of its performance envelope, would be nothing short of a revelation. Another key advantage of the F-22 that the F-47 is expected to equal or better is the altitude at which it can operate. The F-22 can operate at giddying heights of 60,000 feet and above. This height offers critical advantages that will arguably be even more important to the NGAD fighter than the F-22. It allows munitions, particularly air-to-air missiles and air-to-ground weapons, to fly much farther than when launched some 20,000 feet below. Considering the threat environment the NGAD family of systems is being built to operate in, this will be a key factor. Even the stealthiest aircraft is still vulnerable to detection, just at significantly shorter distances, depending on many factors. As the likes of Russia and China constantly upgrade their counter-stealth and anti-aircraft defenses, it will become increasingly challenging to evade these systems, so being able to fight its way through will be a paramount capability for the F-47. Maximizing standoff missile capability in the air-to-air and air-to-ground realm could mean the difference between completing a mission or not, even the difference between life and death. It also buys a degree of future-proofing in terms of survivability and relevance. Just as critical is the extra line of sight offered to its sensors and communication systems at higher altitudes. At 40,000 feet, the line of sight distance is around 245 miles, and the radio horizon service range is around 283 miles. At 60,000 feet, the line of sight distance is around 300 miles, while the radio horizon service range is around 347 miles. Altogether, this represents an approximately 22% improvement. This is especially important, as the F-47 will need to be data-linked with CCAs and other assets over a broad area, serving as a kind of quarterback for their sensors, relays, and munitions. Each extra mile of connectivity will thus enhance survivability and create a much larger overall area in which the NGAD system can impact the battlefield independently, without the need for beyond line-of-sight relays such as satellites. For instance, if an NGAD fighter is operating at 60,000 feet and a high-flying communications node is flying at 80,000 feet, they can stay connected at nearly 750 miles from each other. Plus, line-of-sight, highly directional data links are very hard to detect and jam, especially those that use advanced low probability of intercept or LPI waveforms. Another area where the F-47 is expected to be a game-changer is in the rapidly emerging field of so-called spectral warfare. Here we expect to see the integration of some of the US military's highest priority and most highly classified projects, including infrared search and track systems, missiles with multi-mode seekers, advanced radars, network and battle management suites, and electronic warfare systems, all enabled by artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies. Perhaps we'll even see laser and other directed energy weapons introduced on combat aircraft for the first time. According to Trump, the F-47 massively overpowers the capabilities of any other nation. We know every other plane. I've seen every one of them, and they're not even close. This is the next level. For now, we can mostly just salivate at the prospect, speculate on the details, and eagerly await the sight of the first F-47 taking to the skies. But what do you think? Are you excited about the world's first 6th-generation stealth fighter? What revolutionary new features do you think it will pack? Will it change the balance of power in the world? Please let us know your thoughts in the comments, and thank you as always for watching.